Toledo, Ohio, March 2023. The inventory. This man lost everything once. His marriage, his house, his 2 sons, gone inside a single year. So he built something new out of a rented garage and a brass key, and for 7 years it held. Then he lost that too. Not the family this time, the company. The whole second life he'd made with his hands, handed to the one person who finally made him feel less alone. That second loss is the one I want you to watch, because the reason it happened is sitting inside you right now, and you can't see it either. Ridgeline Tools closed on a Wednesday. No bankruptcy filing, no press release. Just a padlock on the loading dock and a liquidator's tag zip-tied to the only machine Gavin Holt ever owned outright. 8 people worked here, not 800, 8. They built hand tools, and they built them well enough that stores from Detroit to Charlotte ordered every month without being asked. The man in the middle of that photo started with a used drill press and a brass key on a nail. 11 months before this padlock went on, he had no idea any of it was already gone.
I built every bench in that shop, cut every piece of steel for the first 2 racks, and I handed the whole thing, the accounts, the books, the client list, to someone who took it apart from the inside while I was standing 10 feet away, smiling at her.
Here is the question this episode answers, and it is not the one you think. The question is not what she did, it is why he let her. Why a careful man, a man who had been destroyed once and swore he'd never be that stupid again, opened the door himself. Watch how he opens it. It looks like the best thing that ever happened to him. The apartment, June 2014, month 1. Gavin Holt signed this lease 4 days after his divorce was finalized. His wife, Megan, kept the house. She kept the savings. And she kept primary custody of their 2 boys, 9 and 6. On paper, the court gave Gavin every other weekend. In practice, Megan made it hard. A handoff that fell through. A birthday that ran long. A tournament scheduled 3 hours the wrong way. He saw his sons a handful of times that first year. A truck with 80,000 miles on it, a duffel bag, and 2 boys who were learning, weekend by missed weekend, to live without him in the room. That was the whole inventory of his life in June of 2014. Here is the part that matters more than the money. The affair had been going on for 2 years before he found out. 2 years. For 700 days, the person closest to him performed a marriage she was not living, and he believed every single day of it. The betrayal wasn't the part that changed him. The blindness was. A man who misses something that big learns one lesson: trust his own eyes and nothing else. Watch what that does to him later.
I thought I knew what my life was. I thought I understood who I was married to. And then I found out I'd been wrong about all of it, for 2 years. That's the part that stays with you, not that she lied, that you believed it, every day, for 700 days.
For the next 18 months, he installed HVAC across the Dayton suburbs. He was good at it. He grew up around tools. His father fixed appliances in a garage behind the house in Springfield. Gavin knew how things were made and how they fit together. But the thing he really learned in those 18 months had nothing to do with furnaces. He learned to get through a day without needing anybody. He'd need that to rebuild. He'd also never put it down again. Toledo, Ohio, March 2016. The workshop. He found this place in a classified listing. $400 a month, utilities not included. He paid the deposit in cash and bought the drill press off a retired machinist in Sandusky for $300. 1 key, 1 nail. That key matters, keep your eye on it. The first thing he built at Ridgeline was a 12-inch wrench with a forged steel jaw. He sold 6 of them at a flea market in Perrysburg. Total take, $94. But he drove home that night with the cash in his front pocket. And for the first time in 2 years, the silence in the truck didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like quiet. There's a difference. He had forgotten there was a difference.
That first year, I loved it. I loved it the way you love something that saved your life. Nobody telling me what to do, nobody lying about anything, just me and the work and whatever I could make with my hands. It was honest. Everything about it was honest.
By the end of year 1, Ridgeline had pulled in $82,000. Flea market sales, a few hardware shops, and 1 wholesale account, a buyer that orders in bulk and resells through its own stores. The first one was a regional chain called Greystone Hardware. Remember that name too. When Greystone leaves, the company is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Year 2, he hired his first employee. Year 3, 3 more. And revenue jumped from $82,000 to $410,000. That kind of growth feels incredible from the inside, but it does something quiet at the same time. The better it goes, the less time you have to look closely at any one part of it. The gaps don't announce themselves, they just open. And sooner or later, somebody walks into one. Gavin's older brother Neil drove down from Mansfield to help install the CNC machine. A CNC is a computer-controlled cutter. It does in minutes what used to take Gavin hours by hand. Neil had watched his brother lose everything 2 years earlier. He'd carried the mattress up the stairs of that Dayton apartment himself. Now he stood in a real workshop with 4 employees. He didn't say, "You did this." He didn't have to. His face said it.
Neil never says much. He just stood there looking at the machine, looking at the guys, and I wanted to say something to him, like, "See? I'm okay. I made it back." But we don't really do that, me and him. So we just stood there and watched them lower it in. That was one of the best days I'd had in years, and neither of us said a word.
By the fall of 2019, Ridgeline had 6 employees, 9 wholesale accounts, and more orders than the floor could fill. Gavin was turning work away for the first time in his life. And here is the crack that everything else pours through. Gavin was a tool maker, not an operator. He needed someone to run the business side, billing, suppliers, clients, so he could stay where he belonged. He knew it. He just hadn't done anything about it. He didn't have to. It came looking for him. And what pulled him in wasn't the help. It was something he hadn't had since the divorce. The Regional Trade Show, October 2019, the introduction. Her name was Claire Whitford. She called herself an operations consultant. She said she'd seen his tools in a Greystone catalog and wanted to know how he was building at this volume with a team of 6. They talked for 40 minutes at that folding table. And she did the one thing nobody in Gavin's life had done since the divorce. She asked him questions about the thing he loved, and then she actually listened to the answers. She asked how long an order took from start to delivery, whether he had a backup supplier, how much he kept on a wholesale sale versus selling direct. He told her everything. Not because she pulled it out of him, because it was the best conversation he'd had in years, and he didn't want it to end.
Nobody in my life talked to me about the business. My brother builds houses. My guys on the floor are great, but you can't talk to them about the whole thing. She got it. She saw the whole thing, and I remember thinking, this is someone I can actually talk to. And it had been a long time since anybody stood next to me and looked at what I'd built and saw all of it.
Ridgeline Tools, workshop floor, March 2020, delegation. Claire joined as operations partner in January of 2020. Now watch this, because this is the whole episode in 90 days. She took over billing, then suppliers, then new clients, then the bank account. And every single time, the words were kind. "Go home, Gavin, you've got the boys this weekend, I'll handle the suppliers. You shouldn't be the one chasing invoices, you're a maker." Every one of those sentences was a gift. Every one of them was also a door closing. He could not tell the difference. Neither could you if someone said them to you on your worst year. In March, he gave her signing authority on the operating account. She could move money without asking him. The supplier contacts in April. By June, she was the only person at Ridgeline who talked to the wholesale buyers. Every relationship the company depended on now ran through one person, and that person wasn't the founder. But here's why he didn't fight it, and it has nothing to do with control. She was also the only person who asked how his weekend with the boys went. You don't audit the one person who asks about your kids.
She was good at the things I wasn't good at. That was the whole point. I'm a tool maker. I don't know invoicing software. I don't know how to talk to a purchasing manager at a distribution chain. That was her side of it. And look, she was easy to be around. After a few years of being the only guy in the building who locked up at night, that's not nothing.
Year 5 was the best year Ridgeline ever had. Revenue crossed $1 million, 14 wholesale accounts, a team of 8, and Gavin was doing exactly what he loved while someone he trusted ran the rest. On the surface, this is a success story. That's the problem with the surface. Underneath it, a second set of numbers was already forming. Numbers only one person could see. Whose hands were on the books that million-dollar year was built on? Keep that question open. It doesn't close until the very end. Neil drove down on a Saturday. First time at the shop since the CNC install. He said something about the place felt different. He asked why the office had blinds now. He asked why Gavin didn't have access to his own client list anymore. Simple questions, the kind a brother asks. And here's the trap. The warnings that come from people who love you are the easiest ones to throw away. A supplier has money on the line. A brother has nothing but the fact that he knew you before.
Neil's not a business guy. He builds houses. I told him, look, this is how a company works when it grows. She handles her side, I handle mine. That's the deal. I was a little short with him, honestly, because part of me knew he wasn't wrong, and the easiest way to not deal with that is to make the person bringing it up feel dumb.
Neil didn't push. He never did. He drove back to Mansfield and stayed away for 11 months. That was the first warning. Here's the second one. It was worse, not louder, worse, because it came from the one human being on Earth Gavin had spent 7 years training himself never to hear. Ridgeline Tools, parking lot, September 2021, the messenger. What happens next, Gavin described with a cold edge that does not appear anywhere else in the conversation. Megan had heard Claire's name from a woman in the Cleveland manufacturing world. There were stories, money that went missing at an earlier company, a partnership that ended in a lawsuit. She told him to check the accounts, and then she said the sentence that guaranteed he would never do it. She told him she recognized exactly what Claire was doing, because she had done it to him herself. And there it is, the cruelest part of this story. The most accurate warning Gavin ever got came from the one person he could never accept it from. She wasn't wrong. She was the wrong messenger. The woman who taught him to be this alone had just diagnosed exactly what his loneliness was about to cost him. He couldn't hear the diagnosis because he couldn't stand the doctor.
She doesn't get to come back and tell me who to trust. She doesn't get that. Not after what she did. I looked at her standing in my parking lot. The parking lot of the company I built after she burned my life down. And I thought, you don't get to be here. You don't get to do this.
She left. She didn't come back. And if you've ever had someone try to tell you the truth about a person you needed to believe in, and felt yourself get angry at the messenger instead of the message, then you already understand the silence she left behind. That silence isn't ignorance. It's a choice. He made it. So would most people. Claire reported year 6 revenue at $1.2 million. The real number found after the collapse was closer to $740,000. The gap, $460,000, lived on paper as invoices she'd written for shipments that went out late or never went out at all. Gavin never saw the gap. He wasn't looking at the books. That was her side of it. And he trusted her side of it the way you trust a friend who's never given you a reason not to, which is exactly how the best ones get you. Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. Accounts receivable. The call came from a steel supplier in Youngstown, a company Ridgeline had used since year 2. The account was 94 days overdue, $22,000. Gavin said there had to be a mistake. The man on the phone said he'd sent 4 notices, all of them to Claire's email. She told him it was a processing error, a batch payment that failed to clear. She'd already called the bank, fixed by Friday. And she said it the way she said everything, easy, certain, like she had it handled. Because she always had it handled. That was the whole reason he loved having her there. He believed her. And this is the part that should make you uncomfortable, not as a story, as a mirror. The explanation made no sense. A 94-day overdue notice is not a processing error, and anyone with the bank login could have checked it in 3 minutes. So why didn't he? Because opening that login meant opening a door, and behind the door was a question he could not survive asking. Did I do it again? Did I hand my whole life to the wrong person, twice? For some people, being robbed is easier than being wrong about someone they let in. Sit with that. It's the most expensive sentence in this entire video, and it's true about more of us than will admit it. The operating account, the money that covered payroll and supplier bills and the lights, held $290,000 in June. By December, $84,000. Claire said it went to new equipment, a supplier contract, a deposit on warehouse space. There was no new equipment. There was no warehouse. The supplier contract was real, but the money was going to a company Gavin had never heard of, a company Claire had set up herself. Now I want you to do something. Stop thinking about Gavin for a second and think about your own thing, the company you have, or the one you're going to build. If one person controls your money and your customers, and you haven't personally looked at those accounts in 90 days, this next sentence is for you. You don't not look because you're lazy. You don't look because looking might prove you chose wrong. And being wrong about someone you let close is the one audit nobody volunteers for. Ridgeline Tools, January 2022. The Quiet. Greystone, the biggest account, $210,000 a year, ended the relationship in December. They said shipments kept arriving late, but Gavin never knew the shipments were late. Nobody told him the account was at risk. He found out when the standing order just stopped appearing on the whiteboard. Read that again. He lost his largest customer and learned about it from a blank space on a whiteboard. Most people stop the story right here. The fraud, the missing money. But the money isn't the lesson. The lesson is what kept him from looking. So let's go there.
I asked her about Greystone. She said they were restructuring their vendor list. We'd get them back in Q2. I believed it. I believed all of it. Because the alternative was that I'd done it to myself again. That I'd let someone all the way in and I just couldn't go there. Not again. Not her too.
That was the financial collapse. But the part that mattered most didn't happen on a balance sheet. It happened between two brothers on a cold floor in January. Neil didn't ask about Claire this time. He asked Gavin when he'd last logged into the company bank account. Gavin said he didn't handle that side. Neil asked who did. Gavin said Claire. Neil asked how much was in it. And Gavin said the truest thing he'd said in 2 years. He said, "I don't know."
I knew, standing in that shop in January, I knew. You could feel it, the way you feel a wall that's not square. And the worst part, I knew he wouldn't hear it from me. Not because he's stupid. He's the smartest guy I know with his hands. He wouldn't hear it from me because I was family. And family was the thing he decided he couldn't afford to trust anymore. So I drove home. I let my little brother stand in that building and go down with it, because I knew if I pushed, I'd just push him closer to her. That's the thing I have to live with. Not what she did. What I didn't say.
Ridgeline Tools, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. Claire didn't resign. No letter, no explanation. She stopped coming to work on a Tuesday and didn't answer her phone on Wednesday. Gavin drove to the home address she'd used for 3 years. It was a rented mailbox at a shipping store on Secor Road. There was no Claire. There never really had been. Not the one he'd built a friendship with. That one was an account he'd opened and filled himself. $11,400. 6 months earlier, that account held $290,000. Over 3 years, she had moved roughly $480,000 into a company he never knew existed. She'd signed contracts with suppliers he'd never spoken to. She'd ended client relationships and told him the clients walked on their own. The unpaid supplier bills came to $340,000. On top of that, she'd taken a line of credit against the company, borrowed against Ridgeline's own name, for another $120,000 without his approval. When it was all counted, Ridgeline owed about $460,000 it did not have. There is a name for what happened to Gavin Holt. We call it the surrogate bond. Here is how it works. A person gets destroyed by someone close to them, a spouse, a partner. The wound doesn't heal, it just stops bleeding. And then, without deciding to, they find someone new to stand in the exact spot the first person stood. And the simple fact that someone is standing there again becomes the proof that they've recovered. The closer it feels, the less they check it. because to check it would mean admitting the first wound is still open, still running, still calling the shots years later from a room they sealed shut and swore they'd never go back into. And here is the part most people get wrong, so hear it clearly. This does not need romance to work. Gavin and Claire were never lovers. They were something that got him faster, a friendship. She was the first person since the divorce who hurt him. That was the whole key. The bond doesn't run on attraction. It runs on relief. It runs in business partnerships, in friendships, in any place where the reason you trust someone has more to do with how badly you needed them to exist than with anything they've actually shown you. Here is the test. Ask yourself why you trust the people closest to your business. Is it because of what they have shown you, or because they make you feel less alone in the work? If that feeling has replaced the discipline of actually checking what they do, the surrogate bond is already running.
Everyone asks how I didn't see it, and I used to have an answer. I'd say she was smart, she covered her tracks, she played me, and all of that's true. But that's not why. The reason I didn't see it is that I couldn't be alone with it again. After the divorce, I built that place by myself, every morning alone, every night the last one to lock up. And when she showed up, and it felt like somebody was finally standing next to me in it, I didn't check, I didn't verify, I didn't ask one single question that might have given me an answer I couldn't survive. I didn't let her in because I trusted her. I let her in because she was the only person in 5 years who made me feel like I wasn't doing it alone. And I would have given her anything to keep that. I basically did.
Claire Whitford stopped coming to work in March of 2022. But Ridgeline didn't close that day. Gavin spent the next year trying to save it, renegotiating with suppliers, paying down what he could, working the floor alone. It didn't matter. The doors padlocked for good in March of 2023. The liquidation covered part of the supplier debt. He is still paying off the rest. Criminal charges were filed against Claire in Cuyahoga County. As of this recording, the case has not been resolved. He moved to Western Pennsylvania and rented a small workshop. One man, no employees, no partner. He repairs hand tools now, restoration work, walk-in jobs. He opens when he wants and closes when he decides. He has not, as far as I can tell, let anyone all the way in since. 2 lessons, and neither is about the fraud. Both are about architecture. The first, picture one person who controls both your money and your customers, and picture yourself with no independent way to see into either. That is not a partnership. That is a single point of failure with a signature on it. Separate the access. Verify the accounts on a schedule, not a feeling. The structure should never need trust to hold, because the moment it does, you've built the exact door Gavin built. The second lesson is the one I actually care about. The person you trust most is the person you examine least. So ask yourself why you trust them. And if the honest answer has nothing to do with what they've shown you, and everything to do with how you needed to feel when they walked through the door, that is not loyalty. It is a liability dressed as loyalty. Gavin didn't need a forensic accountant to save his company. He needed one person to ask him one question he could not ask himself. Is this trust, or is this just relief? I'll be honest with you. I've made this exact mistake. Not with this much money, but I've kept someone close because the room was warmer with them in it, and I called it trust, and it cost me. So I'm not standing above this story. None of us are. That's why it's the first one I'd want a founder to see. When I asked Gavin what he wanted people to take from all this, he didn't talk about Claire. He didn't talk about the money. He talked about why he built the company in the first place. He had 2 sons he barely got to see. The court gave him every other weekend, but his ex-wife gave him less. So he built a company instead, something solid, with his name over the door, so that when his boys were grown and asked what their father did, the answer would not be the year he lost everything. That was the point of all of it. And he lost it anyway. Not to bad luck. To a plain fact he can finally say out loud. A man who only sees his children through a windshield will let almost anyone sit in the empty chair beside him. And he will stop asking what they're doing there.
Gavin told me the shop in Pennsylvania is small on purpose. Only one bench, a grinder, a parts shelf. He said he doesn't ever again want to build something so big that he stops noticing who's standing inside it. He said that's how you lose people. He's lost enough. Neil came to see the Pennsylvania shop last fall. He stood in the doorway a while. He didn't say, "You did this," the way he had in Toledo. He just looked, and then he saw the key. The brass key on the plain metal ring, hanging from a nail by the door. The same key from the first Toledo workshop. The one Gavin took with him when he signed that $400 a month lease in 2016. The one thing he never handed to anyone. Claire signed for everything Ridgeline owned. She had authority over the money, the suppliers, the clients, the credit, the name, but she never once touched that key. It hung by a different door the entire time. Neil looked at the key and looked at his brother and said nothing. He didn't have to. It was the one piece of the original Ridgeline that no one else ever got their hands on. And Gavin kept it, not as a souvenir, as proof. Proof that there was one door he opened that nobody else ever walked through. He's a careful man now. He locks up alone. And on the wall by the bench, where his hands can reach it, the key still hangs. Every story on this channel is a mistake somebody never saw coming. We take a new one apart regularly so you can see yours first. Subscribe. It's the cheapest tuition you'll ever pay.